Welcome to the Literally First Class podcast, where I will teach you how to overcome anxiety and achieve somatic success. I'm your host, Carrie Ford. I'm a somatic success and holistic life coach here to bring humor, insight, and wisdom to the modern day woman that wants to feel alive in her daily life. You ready? Come on, I saved you a seat in first class. So I'm getting ready to go to our first transformational retreat here in Atlanta called Unmade. I've run a few other retreats. Actually, one was on a private island in the British Virgin Islands, another was in Belize. But this time I decided to bring everybody to me, and I'm really excited about that. I'm also really excited about what this retreat stands for and what we are committed to creating, which is absolute transformation from the inside out, because this is an unbecoming immersive experience. So what does that mean? It means that this high performance woman that feels like she just can't fucking take a break wants to learn how to have more by doing less. And so I want to talk about a few things today that I think are going to be super powerful for you, because every time I have let go of things that have controlled me and created what I've called like a self-imprisonment, I have been more free, had more fun, and had more permission to play as a result. And I want that for you. I want that for every woman that's listening to this, because how we give less fucks is by going through the process of unbecoming, letting go of everything that was never us to begin with. And I want to share with you a few things that I think will be super helpful and super valuable in identifying where this comes from, why you might have it, and what the it is that I'm alluding to. So the it is that I'm alluding to is called achiever anxiety. Achiever anxiety is the perpetual chasing of a feeling, and it keeps us in a nonstop loop of pursuing the next thing, the next project, the next book, the next, whatever it is. And you'll know if you fall into this category, if you suffer as a 1% woman in training, if you suffer from achiever anxiety, you will know, because you will commonly find yourself saying or thinking or acting from the space of, I will have time when? Or just this one more project and then I can relax. Or you always find yourself in a building season or a transition or putting out fires. It's constantly like you're manifesting chaos. You feel important because you are busy. And really, ultimately, what we're seeking with this achiever anxiety is we're looking for ways to prove to ourselves that we matter, that we get to exist and be seen and be acknowledged. That's why acknowledgement feels so good. But if it's only ever externally facing, who is pouring into us? And so we've got to learn how to break up with the achiever anxiety if we want to get clear on what space we're operating from to begin with. To be clear, being successful in whatever way that you define that, having lots of money, living a luxurious life, and I truly believe luxury is art, having all of those things and everything you want is not wrong. But you have nothing if in having everything you thought you wanted, you actually can't even connect to or feel fulfilled. If you can't feel successful, then what is it all for? So I want you to get out a pen and paper, and I want you to draw a circle. And you're going to just put dots at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. And on there, the first one, I want you to put stressors. Stressors are what triggers are in your life that cause stress. These are the root causes. In my opinion, the modern day woman has too many stressors that are too large all at once. That in itself is likely traumatizing. But think about it. There still is a very alive double standard for women that are working mothers. I will say I have seen more and more men partnering with their women, truly showing up as a team because both partners work and both of them are parents. So it requires both of you to show up, maybe in similar or different ways, whatever that works for you guys. But there are just way, way too many expectations now in modern day life. We've got Pinterest parties and, the fashion from Instagram and all these things to keep up with. And let's not forget that we are always accessible through multiple inboxes. I remember actually working in New York when I was in advertising at an ad agency. I remember when BlackBerries came out. And I think now, fast forward to 2022, especially after the pandemic, my kids have an at-home remote working day. What the fuck? What are we doing to our kids? God forbid they have a snow day and we're saying, oh, if you have Wi-Fi, then therefore you can do work. What happened to a day off, a surprise extra bonus day? My kids also have working snack at school. I know I've talked about this on podcasts I've been interviewed on, and maybe even on here, I can't remember, but they have a 10-minute working snack. So the teachers told us, please make sure the snack isn't messy because we need to learn during this time and we can't take a break to eat. I have so much to say, it's probably its own episode, but what are we doing? So stressors, we have elevated, I'm still talking about point 1 here at the top of your circle. So there are so many multiple stressors. There's way more than there used to be, and they feel a lot bigger. The expectations have elevated, and therefore our baseline of what's required to appear normal has shifted. That's a problem. That is a problem. The next thing on the circle at 3 o'clock is stress. This is literally how we react when we feel under pressure, out of control, threatened, maybe we're unable to manage a situation. This is our stress response. How we respond to all the shit we have going on, all those stressors. It's no wonder that most of us have a high level of normalized baseline stress. It's also not surprising that most of us, if we take a break, get sick or we're just sleeping. Okay, that's an indicator you likely have too many stressors and they are too large and all at once. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to go back here after the 4 points and bring up something interesting and show you where the achiever anxiety shows up. Then we have anxiety. This is when unintegrated trauma or unmetabolized stress basically expresses in the mental, emotional, and physical body through symptoms and feelings, thoughts, and things like that. So anxiety is actually a symptom of elevated stress. And our stress response, how we manage it, what our bandwidth is in direct correlation to the amount and the size of the stressors in our life. And then at 9 o'clock, so anxiety was at 6, at 9 o'clock, we have masks of anxiety. This is the way we learned how to manage the symptoms and feelings of anxiety. Because we have to manage it somehow, so we look to, you guessed it, our role models, whoever those might be, parents, teachers, people that played a very large role in our life. We look to them to learn how to manage the symptoms and feelings of stress, aka anxiety. And we reflect what is mirrored to us. So if our parents were stressed out and therefore had a lot of anxiety, we were mirrored anxiety. And so we may not even know consciously what we were connecting to, but we were simply mirroring what was shown to us, what we had access to, right? So this is when survival responses have not been fully discharged, and they're seeking completion through self-protective impulse and somatic expression. This is when we see our threshold of what we can handle. This is when things like the fawn response might be triggered. This is when we subtly abandon ourselves and we don't know it. We are literally trying to manage the overwhelm in the system. And prolonged overwhelm in the system and stress starts to cause pain. It leaves a stress imprint in the body. That's why all of this continues to play out, because it's what we know, it's what's familiar. So even when you have time in your schedule, suddenly you fill it. This is even why when you try to rest, you're like, what do I do? Because your baseline is so elevated for stress, what you're used to, what your body is used to being at, that feels foreign. So the achiever anxiety is a way to avoid dealing with the anxiety, which then in turn creates more anxiety, right? Because avoidance creates that. Achiever anxiety says, when I write the book, then I can relax. Achiever anxiety says, once I blank, then I can be happy. Achiever anxiety says all sorts of lies, all sorts of things to keep our foot on the gas pedal so that we go, produce, even though we're tired. And it does not give us time to check in with ourselves. That's why we've got to slow the fuck down. So the achiever anxiety on this circle shows up in the masks of anxiety. It's one way that we've used performance to glorify our anxiety. We have called it a gift and a superpower, and I'm not here to make anybody wrong for having anxiety and having a positive spin and outlook on it. However, we also have to be mindful of spiritual bypassing, which is where we avoid the deeper healing, because who are we without the anxiety? And if part of you feels really scared about the idea of uncoupling anxiety as your driver, it's an invitation into deeper growth, peace, calm, healing. Because that's not sustainable. It's sustainable until it's not. And I get it, because most women in this place, whether you're a 1% woman in training or you're the 1% woman where you feel like you've mostly figured all this out, this is the place that will constantly have you sourcing external validation, acknowledgement, and purpose from other people. It'll also be the place that you constantly come back to and call it motivation. Motivation is not anxiety, but it might feel really similar in the body if you haven't done the somatic work to truly identify the difference. Because believe me, there is a huge difference. Most of my life was driven by anxiety, and I didn't know it because it was high functioning. What I realized is that high functioning anxiety is anything but functioning. I was exhausted all the time. I had an eating disorder. I would outwork anybody. And I used to pride myself on it because most people sat back and thought, wow, her work ethic is amazing. Or you're such a high performance employee. Or I wish I had that dedication and commitment. What's wrong with me that I don't have it? So if this is you, I want to let you know that anxiety is okay. We all are going to have an element of anxiety and stress. And of course, stressors. Like, that's life. Life is lifing. But I'm going to invite you into unbecoming and unmasking and uncoupling from those masks of anxiety. I didn't even know I had anxiety for a long time. It's also what kept me in rigid, militant rules that I basically self-constructed around how I thought I should be and what was right and wrong. But then I had a wake-up call where I felt like I did everything right, and then I found myself divorced. Do you ever do that? I did everything right. Why did this happen? Maybe it's, I thought I did everything right. How did I end up bankrupt? I thought I did everything right. How did I end up divorced? I thought I did everything right. How did this business fail? Whatever the thing is, your come to Jesus moment. So the masks of anxiety are anything but you, but we just have a strong hold on the identity of who we think it makes us, because it feels like we fucking matter when we are motivated and when we get acknowledged. And if we don't matter, I was talking to my new marketing mentor. I was talking to her about this, and she was like, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what mattering means and what does it mean to matter. And she was like, think about it. If we don't matter, then we don't exist. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. So I want to let you know that this is fixable. You can heal this, but it requires us to kind of rewind that circle and take stock. And so I'm going to leave you with a few tips here. The first is to do an inventory of the stressors in your life. What have you currently committed to? What is actively on your plate? And how big do these feel in your body? Meaning, how stressful do they feel to you? Maybe they're not actually large items, so to speak, but they might feel big in your body. They might feel heavy. They're not life-giving. So what are the stressors in your body? Take stock, take inventory. Then your stress response. How are you managing these things? How are you handling the stressors in your life? What are you doing to help pour into you, to take care of you, to love you, to have fun, to let your hair down, to play, to laugh, to experience joy, to create spaciousness, to receive more of all the things? What are you doing in order to respond better? And this is where I'm going to invite you into getting curious about your self-care practices and also how you pour into yourself and start to unwire and uncouple a few of these things. Because then we have less anxiety as a result of already having a handle on our stress and therefore stressors. And then how do the masks of anxiety show up for you? If you were to name them, how do they show up? And can you give specific examples? Journal on this. Like, get a journal out, write down, how do these show up? What are the names of the masks? Because then you can start to become familiar with them. Oh, that's interesting. Like, one of the names of masks that I have for myself, this was one that played out and fooled me for a very long time, which was if it looks good, then it will feel good. It was often how I tricked myself into posturing or focusing on vanity things and saying, well, if it looks good, well, then it will feel good, only to find out, like, I don't know if that ever felt good. It just was trickery to keep me operating in that achiever anxiety. So what are your masks of anxiety? That one for me was called the show must go on. Or again, if it looks good, then it must feel good. That's the name of that mask. How do you mask? Where does it show up and what would you name it? So those are just a few ways that you can start to identify the place of which you're operating from. And then from there, you can discern, is this anxiety or is this intrinsic motivation? Because remember, intrinsic motivation will just flow out of you. There is no frenetic energy. It feels peaceful, calm, grounded, and in control. I know this because I have done a lot of energy work. I've done a ton of somatic work on myself, but I've also walked many, many, many clients through feminine embodiment, leadership training, and somatic work. And I'm excited to share with you a few more things that are coming in the pipeline. I'm excited to come back on the podcast and share with you the transformation and the experience at Unmade. And if you feel called to get even more curious about this kind of work, I'm going to encourage you to submit an application for the next Unmade retreat, which is happening March 23rd here in Atlanta in 2023. So I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you guys when I get back from the retreat. I hope you enjoyed your flight, and I'll see you on board again soon. Seriously though, thanks for listening. If you're ready to take this work deeper and upgrade your mind, I want to invite you to join us inside my Millionaire Mindset program. This is where you'll start using my guided meditations to help you overcome anxiety and experience even more abundance. When you join, you'll have access to my entire audio library. Head over to elevatewithcarrie.com and we'll see you inside.